So it seems like Bethesda did a bit of an oopsie, similar to the oopsie that we did see from the Outer Worlds yesterday, which I made a full video on but posted really late, so some of you guys might have missed it. It seems as if Bethesda might have made a couple of mistakes over the past week or so, not necessarily game-breaking mistakes, but they definitely affect the experience of certain players. In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, but I will have timestamps for all of these down below in case you don't want to hear one, you get bored of hearing one. I talked recently about how a bunch of players for Fallout 76 were unbanned. It seems like that was a mistake and everyone got banned again. Outside of that, it seems like there might be some issues behind the scenes with this most recent Fasnacht Parade that we have been seeing. So if you're wondering why you can't get some of those rare masks, I may have an explanation for you. And then finally, we actually got a ton of new details about next week's survival mode for Fallout 76. I'm really excited for this one, and what we hear looks pretty good except for one major decision that I think could tilt a lot of players. If you guys do enjoy the content, you can leave a like or subscribe, but with all of that being said, let's just jump into the first story on these recently rebanned players. So a little over a month ago now, I talked about how Bethesda actually did a ban wave. Effectively, if you had over 100,000 of a rare item pass through your account in a 30-day period, you probably saw a ban. We didn't get an explicit list of what those rare items were, but it was things like ultrasight ammo, or at least that's one of the examples we did see. Bethesda using the logic that no player could have reasonably achieved that in a 30-day period, and thus they must be duping or using some other illegitimate methods. Although with this ban wave in particular, there was a couple of interesting factors. There were already several other ban waves for this game, but this one really stood out. First and foremost, it seems like the ban wave started on a Saturday. Yet people didn't actually start getting notifications of their ban until the following Sunday night or some on a Monday. So for some of these players, they couldn't access the game for 48 hours and they didn't really understand why. For this one, while you're banned, you'll see this error message, so it's not really obvious you were banned. Naturally, all these people did end up getting emails eventually, even if it took a couple of days, but that's where the next interesting point came. Technically, this wasn't even a ban wave. Bethesda was doing something different this time around, and as you could see by the email, these accounts were just suspended. They didn't have the option to appeal just yet, but they were pretty much getting a confirmation they would be unbanned at some point after a follow-up update. In previous ban waves, people were banned in a more traditional sense and they had the option to appeal, but with this one it was quite notably different. So then a couple of updates to the game did come and go and people still weren't unbanned. There really wasn't any further communication from Bethesda as to what that update would entail, but with this past update, as we got a weight limit on characters, and if you exceed that weight limit you have to delete items, many expected this is when we could start seeing that unban wave, and lo and behold, just a day or two later, people started getting access again to their accounts. One of the really interesting parts though, there was no notification from Bethesda. As I mentioned before, following that update, people had a hunch that this would mean they're unbanned, so people just tried to log in, and subsequently a ton of people discovered, hey, I can log in again. But even as of the time of filming this video, Bethesda hasn't talked about this. There's been no official statement like, oh yeah, we unbanned all of you, and nobody got any emails. So unless you tried to log in, you wouldn't have known you got unbanned. Even further, none of the items from these users' accounts were actually deleted. They still had access to everything. Well, in the end, it actually seems like those people weren't supposed to be unbanned, because just a couple of days later, now just a day ago, many of those accounts ended up getting rebanned. It's not clear exactly when this occurred, but it seems like it was over 24 hours ago, but less than 48 hours ago. So as people went to log in, they discovered that same error code that I mentioned earlier. Now at the end of the day, this isn't too big of a deal. As I mentioned before, I thought one of the really weird parts about that ban wave and subsequent unban wave was how nobody lost any of their items. Like all these accounts were accused of duping or using illegitimate means to acquire items, but never got those items removed. But the part about this situation that is really odd, or if you're affected by it could be very frustrating, is during this entire time, Bethesda hasn't said anything. Out of all these accounts that have been rebanned or unbanned, or even some of the many posts you can find on it, I haven't seen an official response anywhere. So I think a lot of people are just kind of confused now as to what exactly happened. The explanation that it was an accidental unban wave is kind of just inferred. Maybe it was an accidental reban wave. We don't really know because we haven't heard anything. And again, at the end of the day, the mistake isn't the issue here. I think the communication part is the more frustrating component. But for those of you that were recently unbanned, sorry, but you probably can't play again. So outside of that, we also do have some news around this recent event to Fallout 76. That with the Fasnacht Parade. I made a full video on this just 2 days ago, and a lot of people have been loving this event. I was somewhat in the minority that I was a little disappointed as I found it was not really challenging. You could just stand there and do nothing because there were so many other players and you were fighting very low level enemies. But either way, just the community aspect alone of this definitely got me to replay it quite a few more times after even the first day. And one of the main components of this event was, if you defend the Protectrons in the parade, you will get mass as a reward. Through data mining, you could see how many mass were meant to be a part of this, some of the other items you can win as a result. But as time passed, people started to realize basically nobody was winning some of those rarer mass. There were certain ones slated as more common and other ones slated as being a bit more rare, but it seems like those rare ones were stupendously rare. There's actually a poll conducted later on that did show that next to nobody had actually found one, even out of the 500 or so people that did respond. There ended up being a couple of screenshots that did surface of people who claim they did win this as a reward through the event, but other people are saying they may have just gotten those from the dev rooms, which definitely could be likely. As you guys remember, a couple of months ago, I actually shared images of almost all of these masks because people had sent me them because they stole them from the dev room. So in effect, for this parade event, there are 5 masks that people are getting, and there are 5 more masks that are either immensely rare to the point where so few people have gotten them that we only see like one post on Reddit of someone having it, or something else is going on making it so these don't pop up. There's been some speculation that one of the values used was not intended to be used and that's why they're not showing up. This also could be intentional. Maybe these masks will only start appearing on Saturday when the weekend comes and people play the game more. Bethesda hasn't said anything around that, and as of yet we haven't really seen an official response. But either way, I just wanted to more make this as a disclaimer. If you're grinding out this event trying to find some of those rare items, just know if you already got these masks, getting any of the other ones is either very, very difficult or basically impossible. Also, something some of you guys might miss is there actually are additional Atomic Shop items added in today. We did see a few additions when the event went live this past Tuesday, but a couple more actually went live today for whatever reason. The Moonshine Mama mask is just a true winner, and it's only available for another few days, so if you don't buy it in the next week, you won't be able to get it ever. A couple of days ago, Bethesda actually posted a weekly newsletter around the Atomic Shop. I know many of you guys might not like some of the content posted on there or not agree with the pricing, but either way, the information shared in this is nice and definitely consumer friendly. They lay out really quickly some of the up-and-coming content, whether it be items that will be going live in the next couple of days, sales going live in the next couple of days, but also exactly when those sales or when those items will no longer be available. None of this is really new information. You still could get all of this just by logging in-game, but let's say you don't want to do that. You just want a quick preview or an idea as to when that sale will end. Well, this is all now nicely available online. Earlier today, Bethesda also shared some details about the up-and-coming survival mode with their latest Inside the Vault article, including changes that would be made to the regular adventure mode. Survival mode is the next DLC coming to Fallout 76. It's going to go live this coming Tuesday. So starting on Tuesday, when you hit the play button in Fallout 76, you'll now have 2 options. Adventure mode, which is basically the existing mode. One of the changes they do announce is in slap damage. So effectively in the game right now, if somebody doesn't want to PvP with you and you attack them, you'll do a very minuscule amount of damage. Although people have taken to abuse this and just follow other players around, dealing little amounts of damage, and you could eventually kill someone. Well, after survival mode does go live, they're actually changing this, so you'll now deal no damage when people aren't PvPing back with you. It's not removing PvP from adventure mode, it's just now you won't deal slap damage. When they attack you back, you will both deal full damage to each other, but before that, you won't deal any damage. On launch, this is only going to affect slap damage, but going forward, they say this will also extend to your camp. So before you engage in PvP with other players, they will not be able to destroy or damage your camp either. But again, to be clear, this is not removing PvP from the regular adventure mode, and it doesn't really change anything about designated PvP areas like workshops, where if someone contests your workshop, you will still engage in full-on PvP with them. But alternatively, we do again have that new survival mode, which is technically survival mode beta. They do mention how depending on feedback around this, they may make future changes, and I definitely have one pretty big suggestion. So the major difference in survival mode is there are no PvP restrictions. When you see another player and you attack them, you will deal full damage and they'll deal full damage to you also. It's meant to be the true PvP mode of Fallout 76. Although during this, all the same quests, events, things like that will still exist, so you can still complete the main quest of Fallout 76 in survival mode if you wanted to do so. One of the big questions following the first announcement of this was, will other players appear on the map? By default in Fallout 76, you can see every other player on the map, but in this new survival mode, you actually won't be able to unless they're wanted or one of the top 3 players on the longest life scoreboard. So in other words, if you look at the map in this new survival mode, you will always see at least 3 players, that being the 3 that have been surviving the longest. One of the big track statistics in this new mode, and it's going to have a full leaderboard system, is how long you survive, how long you have been going for your current life. As we can see from the screenshot, this is going to be in comparison to everyone on your current world, and you can see it compared to also just the weekly best of everyone on the world. Although they do mention in the future, you'll be able to compare these stats with other people on your friends list. It just doesn't seem like that'll be available at launch. Outside of that, on the side panel of these leaderboards, you can see some of the other stats we presumably will be able to track, such as your player kills, XP gained, events completed, but then also you do see time wanted, and this is an interesting one. As I mentioned before, wanted players are still a system in this game. To become wanted in the base game of Fallout 76, you'd either have to destroy parts of somebody's camp or attack their player enough without them attacking you back. So it was meant to be very one-sided. Naturally, in the PvP mode, that's not as much of a thing because there aren't PvP restrictions. So in fact, in this one, rather, what you can do is actually place a bounty on other players. So if an enemy does kill you, you no longer will have the option to seek revenge, but rather, now you can spend some of your own caps to place a bounty on their head. This will convert them to a wanted player, and thus, as a result, they will actually appear on the map. Now, one of the big questions I have around this is, how much of a bounty? Like, can I place a 1-cap bounty and then that person will appear on the map? Because that seems very abusable, although as of right now, they don't go into specifics around that. There's some other changes in this mode. When you kill other players, you're going to get twice as many caps as you would in the regular adventure mode. Just in general, experience is amped up in this mode. Any kind of experience you gain in this mode will be 20% more than in the base adventure mode. If you are killed in this mode, you will drop all of your junk like you always did, but also you're going to drop a random amount of the aid items you were carrying. So that being some of the things like food and water, but also healing items or combat items like stim packs and Excel. There's also some just general changes to the gameplay. They mention how only the healing effects of 1 stim pack of each type will be active at a given time, so it's not like you can stack them. Although they don't really say whether or not you could stack the healing effects of stim packs with like food, or even food with water. In the base game of Fallout 4, water items actually heal you a bit more quickly than typical food items. And then one point that is really interesting that they don't really expand on is, they say they made some overarching adjustments to PvP damage in survival mode to make weapons feel more deadly in your hands, while also limiting the likelihood that another dweller can drop you in one hit. So I assume this means they normalize the damage curve a little bit more, so things on the high end will do less damage, things on the low end will do more damage. Hopefully this makes it so to an extent almost any weapon is basically viable, especially if you get the drop on someone. But they also mention in this mode that you will only be able to respawn or fast travel to your camp, Vault 76, and train stations. Something I actually missed on the first time around recording this video. Even though you could only respawn at those locations, you could actually also fast travel to owned workshops, which is kind of weird because I assume you'll just be able to respawn and then immediately fast travel to your workshop for probably little caps or no caps as it is in the base game. But this obviously makes workshops significantly more valuable. Now, collecting and claiming some of those workshops in some of the more obscure areas gives you a very easy point to travel to. When you respawn or fast travel to one of those places, you will be invulnerable for a short amount of time, but if you start firing your weapon, that will go away. But one of the very, very notable things that is absent from this are other players, your teammates. So seemingly, you will no longer be able to fast travel to your teammates, which will be a huge change in this probably very team-focused mode. But then one of the other things they are leaving in, which is the thing I take the biggest issue with, is you can actually carry over your characters. So if you create a brand new character for survival mode, you could still play it in adventure mode, or alternatively, you can use your existing adventure mode characters in this brand new survival mode. When they initially announced this mode back a couple of months ago, and they did reveal that would be a thing, there was massive backlash. So I kind of had it in my head, I was like, yeah, they're definitely gonna change that, right? This is really frustrating because there's a lot of characters out there right now that are just kitted out. They have 2-shot explosive weapons, a full set of upgraded Exo-1 power armor, and taking them down is going to be difficult. It's nice to have the playing field leveled when this mode does come out. Even further, you could just go into the traditional adventure mode, farm a bunch of rare resources, then jump back into survival mode to use them. But as of right now, they are sticking with it, and they really emphasize that point, like the experience bonus you get from survival mode. It seems like the survival mode's meant to be riskier and tougher, but you're also going to get added bonuses to your character, which then you could later carry over to the regular adventure mode. I'm not a fan of this. I really really hope they change their mind in the next few days before this mode comes out, or at the very least give me the option to play on servers with only survival mode characters, no carryover. Although either way, one other thing they actually do mention is this mode's actually going to have unique challenges each week with unique legendary awards. These are described as more difficult challenges than you probably would find in adventure mode, such as completing a bunch of events or hunting down legendary creatures. But if you do successfully complete these in survival mode, you will get some of these weapons. And in effect, each of these will be available for 1 week. And they say even after these 6 weeks are completed, they will add in more going forward. And I think that's a pretty cool event. Some of these are actually pretty good and well tuned. They're still not necessarily as good as a 2-shot explosive weapon, but at the same time, as far as a legendary weapon go, they are formidable. So all in all, I'm really excited for this new survival mode. I'm really disappointed that they are carrying over existing players. I think that's just gonna really change the dynamic. I was really excited for day 1 of survival mode to jump in and find a bunch of other level 1 to 10 players. They also actually never mention whether or not that level 5 PvP limit is still in effect. In the base game of Fallout 76, you can't engage in PvP until you're level 5, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a thing in this mode. Overall though, I do plan to do a ton of live streams. I think it's going to be a ton of fun, although hopefully that doesn't involve just me getting one shot by a bunch of high level players on my newly created account. I imagine with this news now over the next couple of days, you're going to see a bunch of people buying up PvP focused legendary weapons and respeccing some of their existing characters. Either way though, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Definitely a longer video, but there's a lot of news and information to come out over the past day or two. And I would say this new survival mode is one of the first things we see as far as Fallout 76 DLC goes that really looks like it'll add in a lot of replayability. Like the first 2 weeks were cool. The parade was fun, the new crafting tables are interesting, but the survival mode indicates, I think, a step to the next level. It's one of those things that won't just be a few hours, but many hours. I'll probably spend 10, 20, 30 hours in this new mode, and I'm very excited to do that. I think it's going to be a big point where people return to this game to try things out. And then on April 9th, we get the big new quest mode, which should be really fun and interesting. So I'd say starting right now, things are really starting to look up for Fallout 76. Some of that new big content is coming. And if you're on the fence about jumping back into the game, I would say if you like PvP, now's going to be a good time to re-download it. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.